prepared for tonight. It's continuing on our series that we started last week on Psalms 23. It's going to be a short one, so we do have time to fellowship, to eat, to have fun, to just be here, especially on this Valentine's night. So if you all would please turn into your Bibles to Psalms 23. We're going to continue into Psalms 23. We're going to read one verse. Well, we're going to be staying in one verse for tonight, but we're going to start at the very beginning again of Psalms 23. We're going to read verses 1 through 4. Our primary focus for tonight is going to be on verse number 4, but we are going to be looking at 1, 2, and 3 as well. 1, 2, and 3. So let's go ahead and begin reading Psalms 23, verse 1. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of the righteousness for his name's sake." Our verse for the night is going to be verse 4. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." We're going to focus primarily here on verse number 4. That's going to be continuing the series, like I said, for tonight on this Psalms 23. The title that I have for tonight is called Walking Tall. Walking Tall. One thing I noticed in a lot of commentaries and a lot of studying that I did for this section of Psalms 23, a lot of people say that this is one of the most famous passages in all of the Bible next to John 3:16. You'll see Psalms 23 used in a lot of places. They'll say Psalms 23 in funerals. You'll see them doing it there when someone has lost somebody, when someone's going through a difficult time, especially verse number 4. You'll always hear them mention, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." My question for you tonight as we begin to go into this message is, have you all ever been in a position of being scared, being fearful, being frightened, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing what might come your way? Has life ever taken a turn that you never thought it would? You go from living in the best moment of your life to now being hit in solid rock bottom. You go from being up here at the top to thinking things are great. The next moment that you see, you're right there at the bottom. You're at the bottom of the bottom. You're thinking, how can things get worse? And then suddenly something just does get worse. All right, you have a perfect plan. You have such a wonderful thought out plan to go about your day, to seek a goal, to set your expectations, only for it to be stopped by some type of obstacle. You have to throw it away. You have to toss it out. You have to think, well, that takes me to plan B, and then C, and then D. Next thing you know, your plan Z is not even working. So you're wondering, what am I supposed to do? Again, Psalms 23, I think one of the things that David tries to tell us is it's okay to have those moments. It's okay for us to go through those things. And he's trying to tell us, let me give you Psalms 23 for a specific reason. Last week, we talked about trying to figure out what are we supposed to do when we see that the Lord is my shepherd. When God is trying to guide us, when God is trying to tell us, here, I'm going to give you guidance. I'm going to walk you through life. I'm going to be there to help you through tough times and good times. We talked about David's life. We talked about things that David had gone through. Again, if you don't know the backstory of David, just a little bit of information about him is during this time, there was a king out there seeking to kill him. There was somebody out there seeking to destroy him. They wanted him dead. His best friend had just died. He had 4 children that were killed before birth. All right, and many other things that were happening to him at this time that I just think that everything just kept turning to a worse for him. Everything was going downhill for him. And yet he's able to write what we talked about last week, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." That was our primary focus at that point, because David was writing to us and telling us, things go bad, things are terrible, but guess what? I have a shepherd who guides me. We talked about what the shepherd does for his flock and how God is compared to as a shepherd, and how God is there for us and telling us, I'm going to take you here, I'm going to put you there, I'm going to give you the things that you need in order to be successful, in order for you to have the right amount of whatever you need in whatever part of life you're living. So we see that verse 4 comes into the picture because verses 1 through 3 are talked very beautifully. A lot of people that study literature, they say that this is probably one of the most beautiful poetic items you could probably find out there, for him to say, he makes me lie down beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. The green pastures. You see these things and it's beautiful, beautiful scenery. But then it takes a turn for the worse in verse number 4. He says in verse number 4, just to go over it one more time, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." When you see verse 4 at the beginning, you're thinking to yourself, okay, wait a minute. He went from saying, he leadeth me in the path of righteousness. Next thing you see here is, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." And right here, it just takes a complete turn, because he starts off with the first 3 verses being very graceful. All right, they have such beauty in the words. And then out of nowhere, he's telling you, you're going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It's like, where did this come from? Did he take it from Ecclesiastes real quick and just think like, I can just switch this up real fast and give you something real gloomy? He's just going in here and he's just trying to change it up. But what is the purpose of that? What is the reason for that? Again, to compare, I think the reason why he gives us Psalms 23, and I think one of the main focuses of our series in Psalms 23 is this type of situation. Again, as I asked this question before, do you guys fear? Do you guys have a fear that you've ever, that you've felt before? You've been so scared of a situation. You've been so caught off guard in a situation. You have such a controlled, you want to control your reality so much that as soon as you get a handle on it, it just slips out of your hand. Your reality now is gone. The reality that you were looking for is now completely gone. You're trying to control, you're trying to grab onto this situation, you're trying to control it as best as you can, but the more you try to tighten your grip on it, you see that it keeps slipping out more and more, and there's nothing you can do the more you keep grasping and trying to go for it. It's like quicksand. The more you start to struggle, the more you start to try to fight it, the more you start to try to get out of it, they say the worse you're going to sink. The more and more you start to struggle, the worse you're going to keep going down. And so here I'm thinking to myself, well, what is the reason for writing verse 4? What is he trying to tell us? I have two things real quick for tonight that I want to go over with us to kind of see how do we figure that out when we're trying to grasp on reality. We're trying to grab it. We're trying to take it by the reins. We're trying to be able to control it, but only to find ourselves losing that grip more and more. What happens in those fearful situations? What happens in those moments where we don't know what to do? I'm going to give you a little story real quick before we go into point number one. I just want to be able to tell you a situation that happened to me a long time ago, or not a long time ago, a couple of years back, only to find myself trying to figure out how can I grasp my reality and what's going to happen. I don't want to go into too much detail about it only because I don't want to say too much and I don't want it to take too long. It's a lengthy story, but to kind of give you a bit of a summary, there was a time when the job that I was working at before this one, we had a whole situation happen with previous managers, and it just so happened that during this time, there was money involved, and anytime you get money involved with places, it doesn't end up well. Anytime you get money involved with other people, it sometimes doesn't come out pretty, and it just so happened that there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes that at some point when I became a manager, when I saw these things happening, one situation happened, and I just happened to be caught up right in the middle of it. I couldn't really keep this private anymore. I had to go and tell the higher-ups and go talk with them, and one thing led to another. Before you know it, I have someone coming to my door, and they're knocking on the door, and it's a detective, and they tell me, I need to ask you a couple of questions about a certain situation that happened. So I go in there, and I go talk to the detective. A couple of hours later, I'm in a room, and it's a small, tiny room. It's not that well lit. It's a little dark. It's got that yellow light. It kind of gives you a little bit of a chill because there's only a table about this long right here, and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, you're completely innocent. You're completely you were just caught up in the middle of it. You're just like, okay, I know I'm innocent. I know I didn't do anything. I just witnessed something. So I had to go tell somebody that, hey, this is wrong. They can't be doing that. But they still need to question you anyway. And so I'm talking with these people. I'm talking with this person. And their job is to just figure out what's happening, what's going on. They have to believe that right here, you might have been involved in something. You might have not. But we still got to figure out what's going on. So he asks other questions. He goes through everything. I'm sitting there answering as honest as I can, deep in prayer in my head thinking, Lord, just don't let me say anything I'm not supposed to because I don't want to say something that, comes off as wrong. I just want to say the right thing and get out of here. After a couple of minutes, he tells me, you're free to go. We'll contact you when we need to. He contacted me one more time after that point. And it just so happened a couple of months down the road, they call me and they tell me, hey, you're in the clear. Everything's all good. You're good to go back to work. Everything's fine. We figured out what happened. We solved it. We figured out who we needed to bring in and who we needed to, continue to, prosecute. And guess what? You're good to go. You're in the clear. I remember the lady from HR had called me and she was like, your name is completely safe. You are good. I think she could kind of tell how kind of like nervous I was when I first brought up the whole situation. But she had told me, rest assured, everything is fine. You are good. She's like, nothing about this will come up on any part of any like you are golden. During that time though that I was going through all these different things, I remember I was still dating Christy at the time, and I remember calling her at some point. I remember texting her at some point, and I just started to panic. I just started to freak out, and she's like, what are you freaking out for? And I told her, because what if I did something? She's like, but you didn't do anything. And I told her, I know, but like, what if I just like did? And she's like, but you didn't do anything. And I'm like, but what if I did? Like you go and you talk to a detective and the guy's 6'6", the guy's 6'5", and he walks in and he's storming over you. And I'm like, I'll sit right here. Yeah, I'll sit down. And I'm kind of a little intimidated. I mean, they got this real big guy. He's coming in and he's like, why don't you take a seat? And I'm like, yes, I will. So I sit down in the chair. He's like, I'll be right back. And he puts the papers. He's like, I'll be right back. And I'm like, yes, sir, you will. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you anything else. And so, I mean, he was a very nice guy. He came to me. He was super respectful. Not once did he do anything disrespectful. He was super polite. He was great. And I was just so scared at that time, because you're thinking to yourself, what if I did? And the point I'm trying to make is, by the way, I didn't do anything. I'm just telling you guys that right now. They're like, man, this guy right here, he got himself into big trouble. But no, I didn't do anything. I promise you guys, no. I mean, I'm just thinking to myself at that point in time, I'm like, what if I did? And I'm so freaking out. And I told her, and I called her. And just to give you a little bit of I'm going to tell you right here, right now, not to go into too much detail again, and I don't like to talk about a lot of these things, but at that point in time, driving home, I started to freak out. I started to panic. I started to cry. And she's like, what are you crying for? What are you freaking out for? And I told her, because this thing has me scared that something is going to happen, and I don't want anything to happen. I told her I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I saw something, they told me something, and I thought, has to be wrong. And I told her, this has to go somebody that can take care of this. This is not my job to take care of it. This is my job to have someone else and let them know this happened. Couple of months later, again, down the road, I think it was about 2 or 3 months later, they get everything figured out. I go back into work and they change up so much stuff. And honestly, the amount of things that they changed in my workplace was so much better. I was so shocked at how good God was, even in that workplace, that he changed so much over the next 6 months, over the next year for me there in that job, that I was so immediately thinking to myself, wow, God has blessed me even here, even in some situation that I just saw a year ago. Again, the point I'm trying to make is, in that point in time, as much as I kept trying to control the situation, as much as I kept trying to tell myself this is going to be okay, as much as I kept trying to say this is not what I wanted, it happened anyway. It happened anyway. I couldn't do anything else about it but just trust that God was going to walk me through this entire thing. So again, I asked tonight, where are you going to be walking tall? Where are you going to be going through in Psalms 23, verse 4, when he says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Let's talk about this real quick. Point number 1. This is something that David makes very clear. The valley is a place you will have to walk through. David doesn't give us this option. God doesn't give us this option sometimes. God, he says here in verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. David doesn't say here, yea, maybe, more than likely. I don't know if you will get there. I haven't gotten there yet. Maybe it's only for me because I was a king and this is in the biblical times, but maybe in the future in 2024, you guys might not have to. It's different. No, he doesn't give that. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. He's repeating it for us to repeat as well. He says, you are going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You are going to walk through the valley and it's going to be tough. He says the valley is a place you will have to walk through. You are going to have to go through. And again, look at the words he's using here. He says, a shadow of death, in the valley of the shadow of death. I don't think there's anything, I mean, again, I could be saying something I probably shouldn't hear, but thinking about it this way, I don't really believe there's anything worse than thinking about the term of death. Because he says, in the valley of the shadow of death. He doesn't say in the valley of the shadow of evil, of corruption, of greed, of want, of lust. No, he says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. In this valley he's walking through, if you guys know what a valley is, I know they say that right down here in the RGV, we are not a valley. I've always heard people tell me it's something completely different. I don't know what it is, but I just still call it the valley. But if you guys know what a valley is something that is kind of very tall. It's very steep. If you walk through it, you're going to see a bunch of hills, not specifically hills, but whatever you're walking through, you won't be able to see above you. You won't be able to see in front of you. You're just going to be walking through somewhere and it's just going to be a big giant slope next to you on both sides. So he says, I can't see what's in front of me. I can't see what's next to me. All I can see is just the path that I'm taking right here until I turn a corner, until I have to go back, until I do a turnaround, until I take the next step. There's nothing else I can see but what's next. I can't see what's next to me. I can't see what's above me. And he says the shadow of death. He says, I'm describing it as, in this context, he's saying there's something right here that's looming over me that's not death itself. He says, but there's something right there in that presence, that evil that it brings, that evil that we can see that the world brings. He says, it's just right there waiting to take me as I'm walking through this right here. He says, as I'm walking through this place, that shadow that is above you, that shadow that's looming over you, he says, I can feel it. I can sense it. It's not really here right now, but it's somewhere around that corner. It's somewhere on the top of that hill. It's somewhere maybe waiting for me down that way. It's somewhere at the top, just watching me, waiting for me to do something that is going to try to startle me and freak me out. He says, you're going to have to walk this path. You're going to have to go through this. It's what surrounds you. He says, this valley right here is something that's huge. You're not going to be able to just see above it. But he describes it. He goes on. He doesn't leave it there. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he continues to say, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Again, we'll stop right there real quick. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. He doesn't continue to say, I'm going to try it. I'm going to push. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to just close my eyes as I walk down. I'm going to ignore the signs. I'm going to ignore the noises. But he just says, I will fear no evil. Despite everything that's happening to me as I take this path, he says, I will fear no evil. To go to the next part, because he says, for thou art with me. He says, because you are with me here in this moment, I will not fear any evil. I think David is trying to make a very beautiful point to us in saying what he said right before. He says, the shepherd is going to lead you through those still waters. He's going to put you right there where you need to be at. In verses, right here, in verses 2 and 3, he says, he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. So he's going to have you rest beside green pastures. He's going to have you rest in such a beautiful place. He's going to make you take that rest. He says in verse 3, he leadeth me beside the still waters. Those waters are so calm. They're so beautiful. There's no storm going on. There's nothing crazy happening. It's such a calm, peaceful moment. And then he says right after that, but then he's going to lead me down the path where it's going to show me the shadow of death. He's going to lead me into the valley. He's going to walk me through there. Sometimes there's going to be times where God's going to tell you, I'm going to walk you here, I'm going to have you rest here, and then that shepherd is going to take you, and he's going to take you, he's going to say, we still have to go through this valley. We still have to go through this time. You still have to go through what you're going through. You still have to confront so-and-so. You still have to tell so-and-so this. I still had to go and say, no matter how much it bothered me, I need to go and tell somebody about the situation happening where I'm working at. This is not good. This is something I believe should not be happening. This is something that goes against everything with integrity, honesty, in all these different ways that I thought to myself, something has to be done about this. This is crazy. And as much as I didn't want to confront that, God says, you're going to have to walk down that valley. You're going to have to take that step. But then like David says, but I will fear no evil because you are with me. God is going to make us sometimes walk down that path and take that path in the valley and use it, and he's going to tell us, but it's okay. Why? I'm right here with you. He doesn't let the flock go by himself. God is not at the top of the valley watching us saying, you'll be fine, just keep going, just keep going. Just watch that corner. You go first. You're fine. God is right there walking with you in that presence, and he's telling you, walk with me, come with me. I will guide you through this point in time. And again, one thing that we have to start seeing, the one thing that we have to first figure out is when we're losing that control, when we're trying to figure out that reality, when we're trying to get our expectations to meet our reality, we have to realize that God is going to tell us, you want that to happen? Guess what? Through the times I'm going to lead you where you have the rest, through I'm going to take you to beside still waters, I still have to take you through the valley. I still have to take you through there. I still need you to see what's right there. For whatever purpose he has it for, everyone has a different purpose in that time. But he says, I still need you to walk through there. The shepherd leads us that way. Because like David says, I don't fear evil because you are with me in that moment in time. He knows the fact that, and it's beautiful, I think, the way David writes it, because he says that shadow is just a shadow. Poetically, he's trying to tell us it's not death itself. There's no evil in itself. It's just that presence. A shadow cannot harm you. The shadow that you put on the floor is harmless. It's just David saying right there that there's going to be times where you're going to feel it, you're going to see it. And sometimes how much do we fear sometimes the shadows of our lives, the shadows of the things that we see in everyday lives? Shadows can't harm us, but sometimes I'm afraid of my own shadow. I'm afraid of the things that happen, that when I finally see it go through, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't that bad after all. Like, that wasn't that horrible after all. Like, that wasn't that scary after all. What was I freaking out for, for no reason? What was I thinking, at that moment when I was just so stressed and so scared and so faithless in my own self, and then I realized, wait a minute, that was actually a lot better than what I thought. And David says the same thing here about that shadow. He says that shadow is going to be right there, but don't worry. When you see that shadow can't do anything to you so long as you're walking with the shepherd. He doesn't say there's death in itself there. He didn't say evil itself is there. He says that shadow that's right there that's causing you to kind of freak out. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I've seen a couple of horror movies in my life, and I can tell you the fact that I think the worst thing that you see is when you kind of look in the dark and you can't see what's right there. That's the worst feeling, I think, in my opinion. When you're looking in something dark and you're kind of like, I don't know what's there, and your mind starts to make up things as you do that. You're kind of just like, I don't know about that. Like, I'm gonna stay away from that. Like, I'm not gonna go down that way. Your mind starts to play tricks on you. Your mind starts to do things to your brain. Your mind starts to tell you all these different things. And it's just because you see something right there. I've woken up sometimes in the middle of the night, and I'm looking in the corner, and I'm like, what is that on my bed? And I'm like, oh, it's just my clothes. Okay, like, you know, like we're like completely fine. But it's because you see something portraying something, and you're thinking to yourself, what is that? All right? Sometimes that happens to us. And David's telling us the same thing here. Don't be fearful of those things that are coming your way. God is right there with you. God is right there ready to help you. The shepherd will lead us all the way through that we have no reason to fear. How does he help us through that time when we're going through this? Takes me to point number 2. Point number 2, the valley is a place where you can find comfort. As we continue and we start to close out, he says here again in verse 4, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And he ends verse 4 with saying, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The rod and the staff give me comfort. Again, I think just in the way he's describing this, he's trying to give us a really good description of like how this works as a shepherd, how a shepherd uses himself to guide his flock, to guard them, to protect them. All right. David continues to say, despite the valley's invitation to fear, despite the fear that you're going to see in life, despite the fear that you're going to witness at times, and sometimes as scared as we can get, he says, it's going to be okay. He goes, I don't fear because God's with me. And guess what? The rod and the staff, they comfort me. He says 2 things here. He says, God is with me in this moment. We've established that. He says that he walks with me. But guess what? What is God using as he's walking through that valley with you? The rod and the staff. I did a little research on thinking about this rod and staff, and some of the things that I read about were, they don't really know specifically why he names it as both a rod and a staff. They're not sure if he's talking about 2 separate instruments, or if he's talking about the same exact instrument, if he's trying to say that it has 2 names, or if the shepherd uses 2 things, but they know for sure that in different terms, they know that the rod and the staff have the same purpose that a shepherd uses for in both situations. It's a weapon for the shepherd. It's an instrument for the shepherd to do several things. It's a protection. It's for protection, to protect his flock, to protect himself. That rod and staff, they protect. The rod and the staff, they're used for security. And one thing I found very, very true and very surprising when I did my research on this was they're used for correction. Sometimes when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, God is taking us there because he says, I need to correct you in a certain way. I need to correct you in what you've been doing. I gave this whole thing last week, this little story last week of how I took some first graders on a field trip with the school, and how the kids were just, the way they kind of, you know how first graders can be, these 6-year-olds, these 5-year-olds, the way they can walk around, the way they can do things. And at some point, I think that wouldn't it be kind of, like foolish of me not to protect them if something were to happen because they're under my protection. At that point in time, I've been appointed to be told, you're taking care of these 8 kids, these 12 kids. I think there's certain times where, like, when I see these kids going in a certain spot that they shouldn't be in, even though we're walking through a place where, like, I remember this one place that we went to at the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville. When you walk into this giant, like, bird cage area, they have little birds that just walk around everywhere. And some of the kids are kind of freaking out because they're excited to go in, but then as soon as they see the birds are free, they're walking super scared, like, I don't want that to touch me. I don't want that to get near me. I need to stay away from that, There was this giant, I don't know what kind of bird it was, but it was a giant bird that was on the railing. And as I'm walking, I've done this before. We've gone there plenty of times. I know what's going to happen. It's going to fly away. It's not going to do anything to us. But I have one student in front of me. She's panicking. She's like, the bird's right there. The bird's standing there. She's like, what is it doing? Why is it there? She's like, sir, what do we do? And I'm like, it's okay. Let's just walk. And as soon as we took the next step, it flaps its wings and it takes off in the air. And she screams at the top of her lungs. And I'm like, it's okay. We're leaving. Look, we're already going out the exit. And we walk out. And she's completely fine after that. But that moment in time, that scared her, that freaked her out. All right, and that was so scary to her in that moment, but I had told her, it's okay, look, we're going to walk through this real quick, and we're going to be out of here. All right, sometimes God tells us that too. It's okay, we're walking through here. You're going to see something that's going to frighten you. You're going to see something that you might not like, but guess what? God says, it's okay. I've taken this on before. When he says in the Bible, when he tells you, he says, I want you to know that you're going to have tribulation here on this earth. But he says, but guess what? I've overcome that. He tells his disciples, I know it's hard. It's going to be difficult, but guess what? It's going to be okay. Why? Everything you can think of that's going to be coming your way, I've taken care of that already. He says, I have that already. So again, the valley is a place where you can find comfort. That rod and that staff that he uses to give us comfort is for protection. It's for correction. It's to tell us sometimes, hey, you know what? You need to fix yourself while we're going through here. Sometimes we think that we're going through life so great. When he takes us, it's only to show our true colors at that point in time when God says, yeah, when we go through here, let's see what happens. And we're so freaking out. We're so scared that God says, it's okay. Look, I need you to walk through here because I need you to see something that when you come out of this, it's going to be better for you. As much as we hate it, it's going to be better for you. As much as you don't like it, it's going to help you. The first four verses, I think, in Psalms 23, give that really, really good description of what a shepherd does for his flock. He leads them to lie down in green pastures besides the still waters, and then he leads them through this valley. As we close out tonight, I want you guys to really think about this one more time as we begin to close out, and as we close out in prayer. Thinking back in a moment, like I did right now, I was thinking about how that whole situation happened and how I thought to myself, how much I panicked, how much I started to freak out, only to be told several months down the road, it's okay. You did the right thing. You're fine. Thank you so much for helping us with this situation. We didn't know what was happening for several years. We didn't know what was happening for some amount of time. You're the first person to come up and say something about it. And now guess what? We were able to figure out what was happening. God will do that to us sometimes, tell us we're going to walk through here, and guess what? When you come out of this, you're going to see how much better things are. Sometimes we, again, try to get that hold of reality. We try to take it right here and then only to see it slip out over and over again. Maybe there's times where God is trying to tell us, you're walking through the valley right now. You can't grab it. You can't see it. But guess what? Trust me. Trust what I'm telling you to walk through. Trust where I'm leading you to. And at the very end of it, you're going to see how much better this is for you. So again, tonight, I invite you as we close out in prayer in just a moment to think about the fact that maybe you're walking through the valley right now. Maybe this is a point in time where you're thinking, this is horrible. This is tiring. This is hard. I can't do this. I'm having a really, really hard time with whatever's happening in your life. I want to invite you guys to just think about what he says here. The rod and the staff, they give him comfort. He will fear no evil because God is right there with them. Let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we want to thank you again for this Wednesday night. We want to thank you for everyone that's here and for anyone that's watching on the live stream. And Lord, I just want to thank you for Psalms 23. I want to thank you for the words that are written here, your word. And I want to thank you, Lord, that you guide us. You are the good shepherd. You are the shepherd that we need in our lives. You guide us, you protect us, you correct us, you lead us. You have us lay down on green pastures besides the still waters, and you also take us through the valley. Lord, whether we're there in that good time or whether we're there walking in the valley in the hard times, we know, Lord, that you are always with us. We know that you are always there to protect us. And so, Lord, I want to pray for anyone tonight that might be going through their own valley right now at the moment. I want to pray for strength. I want to pray for wisdom, for encouragement, for strength, that they may be able to find you and seek you and keep their eyes on you, that they may get through this moment where they're at right now, dear Lord.